In 2011, Time magazine made the protester the Person of the Year. This was rightfully appointed because protesters changed the world that year, especially during the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was a set of uprisings that occurred through several nations in the Middle East and North Africa. The first two countries to experience a revolution were Tunisia and Egypt. Tunisians and Egyptians were living for many years under a repressive regime and yearned for some democratic rights, including the rule of law. The rule of law meant a civil state would be established and no person would be above the law regardless of power and money. Other causes for the Arab Spring included human rights abuse, police brutality, political corruption, etc. Egypt was also under the emergency law for many years.
Mubarak took office in 1981, he placed Egypt under emergency law, which suspended constitutional protections and broadened the authority of the police and politicians. This effectively froze citizens' rights to equal protection and a fair trial. As a result, politicians and activists were arbitrarily detained, secret prisons were established, and media outlets were blocked.
Web 2.0, aka the new technologies, and social media networks aided greatly in the uprisings that occurred in Middle Eastern countries like Egypt and Tunisia. Social media platforms also impacted information flows during the Arab Spring. The way Web 2.0 technologies were used in Egypt and Tunisia were different in each country. In 2009, the Tunisian government blocked the internet for 10 days because of several posts that criticized the regime. A year later, WikiLeaks released a set of documents called Tunisian Cables. These documents consisted of emails between the US ambassador of Tunisia and other high-level government officials. The emails basically stated that the US and France were losing confidence in President Ben Ali and that they were going to stop supporting him soon. This spread around Tunisia very quickly and gave the people a sense of hope that one day the regime will change. That same year, a street vendor called Mohammed Bouazizi went to the local government in his town of Sidi Bouzid to complain about the police harassing him about not having the right permits. The government officials completely ignored him, so he exited the building and set himself on fire. This was his way of protesting the government's oppression and lack of jobs in the country. News about Bouazizi quickly went viral on websites like Facebook and Tunisian blogs like Nawat. Bouazizi's cousin Ali called Al Jazeera to get the mainstream media to focus on him. He told Al Jazeera that his cousin was educated because they would have ignored him if he wasn't. This turned out to be a lie that Al Jazeera never validated. When news broke out about his suicide attempt, the Tunisian people became scared because the regime wasn't allowing both educated and uneducated people to make money to survive. In the Tunisian uprising, the information flows were somewhat unusual. The contraflows were emerging and spreading from user-generated content, which was step one of the information cascade. The second step were curators such as Nawat, which is a blog portal, that would curate news and information that was happening around Tunisia. Twitter was also used by curators who gathered information into one place. Lastly, the information would spread to mainstream media networks such as Al Jazeera and France 24. By looking at the information flows, you can see how the information was circulating during the Tunisian Revolution. The mainstream media wasn't paying attention to Tunisia, so Web 2.0 was their dominant form for communicating with each other and to the outside world. In addition, censorship was a major issue during Ben Ali's presidency. He was said to have blocked thousands of websites such as translation websites, pornography, and even email services. On June 6, 2010, a 28-year-old Egyptian man called Khalid Said was brutally murdered by the police in Alexandria, a city in northern Egypt. His face was so visibly damaged and deformed that the photos went viral all over the internet. These photos disturbed both local Egyptians and Egyptians abroad, including Google executive Wael Ghanem. He was so shocked by this act of police brutality happening in his own country, So he created a Facebook page called We Are All Khalid Saeed, which attracted 130,000 members by mid-June. The Facebook page became an important tool for mobilizing all the Egyptians to gather accordingly. Wa'il even translated some posts from Arabic to English in order to expand his audience. There were many protests happening all over the country already, but it was just building up for one special unforeseen day. Ghanem and hundreds of other Egyptians decided that the people can't give the government the power to abuse its citizens anymore. He decided that the Egyptian citizens should protest and revolt against Mubarak and his regime, and he chose January 25th, 2011 to be the date to finally depose Mubarak. For about 5 months, the Facebook page was used for people to express their support with signs and videos. It was also used to stay updated with information about many protests, future events, and most importantly, the day of January 25th. This day is also typically National Police Day in Egypt, so it was the perfect day to confront the police that killed Khalid and confront the government that gave the police that power. The citizens needed to be organized as a collective entity to be stronger as a group. They actually went down to the streets every day from the morning to the night until Mubarak would resign. From January 25th to February 2nd, the internet was shut down by the government to obstruct the assembling and the information flows. Interestingly enough, Anonymous actually played a role in this because they helped set up modems for the internet and they even gave tips on how to deal with tear gas, which was mentioned in We Are Legion. During the stage, 32% of Facebook users in Egypt were raising awareness about the movements. 30.9% were using Facebook to organize events, and 24.7% were sharing knowledge and announcements. Lastly, 12% were using it for entertainment purposes. For 17 days, Egyptians swarmed the streets until Mubarak announced his resignation on February 11th. Unfortunately, Egypt wasn't as successful as Tunisia following the revolution. They had their first presidential elections, but the next president, Mohamed Morsi, turned out to be a despot as well. For Tunisia, Bin Ali was overthrown and quickly fled to Saudi Arabia for protection. This was considered as a success for the Tunisian people. They overthrew their tyrant and had parliamentary elections. Post-revolution, the country still continues to adopt more democratic values, especially regarding gender equality.